thank you for that very warm welcome. I'm particularly relieved to be speaking with you all today because, well, I've had a bit of a week. It's been a bit of a stressful week because, you see, I've had my very first brush with cancel culture, but luckily I seem to have made it out of the other side. You see, I was put on blast this week by social media star and darling of the left-wing media, Hannah Ferguson. So she called me an extreme right-wing advocate, and Abby Chatfield, her lefty mate.
I don't know if I'd call Hannah Ferguson like extreme leftist or leftist. I think maybe like centre left. But yeah, definitely Abby is a bit, yeah, she's on that side.
Then jumped online to say how revolting a piece I wrote was.
What was the piece?
See, the left weren't happy with me, you see, because of a piece that I wrote for the Australian Financial Review. And I started the piece with this line. I said, according to his critics, Charlie Kirk was not assassinated when he was shot in front of 3,000 people at Utah Valley University. He committed suicide. To back this up, I quoted Hannah Ferguson, who in response to the news of Charlie Kirk's murder, wrote on her Instagram, do I believe that he empowered the violence that ended his life? Yes. And then she said, is violence sometimes necessary? Yes. She wrote that she didn't think she should have to make a choice between celebrating Kirk's death or condemning it, because the conversation apparently is more nuanced than that. Oh, what a time we are living in, when condemning a public execution of an...
All right, before we jump into this, the whole like Charlie Kirk thing, like, yeah, I'm a little interested of how much it's impacted Australian politics in a way. Like I get you can, sort of be, if you actually saw the video and that, like, it's a bit of a hard video to watch and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to like the impact it has on politics, and I think it's a lot more like, I feel like the right wing Australian politics, like, it's kind of absorbing it and using it as a way to sort of sell its messaging, which I think maybe what Hannah Ferguson might be going on about here. But yeah, it's interesting that the Charlie Kirk thing has been used as a talking point between Mia and Hannah Ferguson. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Innocent man in front of his wife and 2 children is seen as a morally challenging decision to make. The broader point that I was arguing in this piece was that the left will now try to spin the narrative to paint a picture of a man whose words amounted to so much hatred that it justified their use of violence against him.
Again, this is like American politics. I don't know why people are having such strong opinions on it from our political sphere. It's I think you can look at it through the lens of like saying that's something horrible happened, like an assassination, but I don't think in trying to absorb it into Australian political messages is it's a bit cringe in my opinion.
Wrote, his opponents pretended to be shocked by the things he said.
Like the left wing and right wing in Australia isn't that extreme as it is in America. So I feel like when we start to absorb this sort of stuff, we're kind of creating that divisive political kind of fight, which I don't think Australia is kind of, we just don't have that, extreme left versus extreme right. But it kind of feels like we're starting to adopt that now, which is a little scary, to be honest.
In reality, they were far more shocked by the number of people listening to him and by the number of people who actually agreed with him.
Mind you, like Charlie Kirk was like all for their Second Amendment or whatever it is for like, bearing arms, for like having guns, where like we don't have that in Australia and we don't have any sort of anywhere similar like in terms of gun violence. And then it's like now she's on stage like basically applauding, Charlie Kirk's sort of positions, but like we don't even have we don't have the same sort of constitutional rights and stuff. Like, so I don't understand why this is making it into this kind of discussion?
You see, his opponents did not see Kirk as a danger because of a handful of misrepresented statements. They saw him as a danger because he was dismantling their cultural monopoly. Charlie Kirk's legacy will be the armies of young people all over the world, young people like me, who now feel brave enough to speak out and fight for their values. And we must continue this fight, unintimidated by the relentless attacks by those on the left to divide and silence us. Because the attempts to...
All right. Jesus Christ. What has the left done to the right in Australia where they've tried to silence their right to speak or anything? I don't understand. Like, it's
unintimidated by the relentless attacks by those on the left to divide and silence us.
Like, what have they done? Like, I don't understand where this comment comes from. It's all just rhetoric. I swear to God, it's all just rhetoric. I don't know. It's fear-mongering rhetoric. And unless you can mention like a few cases, then like you're just spitballing.
Because the attempts to silence voices on the centre-right are relentless. And it isn't just coming from the outspoken, callous radicals on social media. These attempts are coming from within our institutions. Just recently, the Institute of Public Affairs and other groups on the centre-right have been pulled into a parliamentary inquiry into misinformation and disinformation as it relates to climate change and energy. According to those leading this inquiry, opposition to the rollout of alternative energy infrastructure, such as wind and solar factories and transmission lines, and the concern about their impact is created both externally and artificially. Therefore, the concerns that we've shared based on our dozens of visits to regional communities are not real concerns of real farmers, no, but rather misinformation shared by institutions like the IPA that seek to impose a political narrative. Now, apart from being blatantly untrue, this is a calculated political move. There are many holes in the policies implemented in order to meet net zero emissions by 2050. And there are many facts to support why the transition A can't happen and B, why it won't happen. The numbers don't stack up when it comes to the costings. There is serious and legitimate doubt as to whether our power grid can actually function the way we need it to. And then there's the question as to, well, what is it all for at the end of the day if we only contribute to 1% of global emissions?
Okay, so there's a few things that she's touched on there that it's just like, of course they're going to look into the IPA who are like spreading misinformation or any like, or you know what she's going on about there, because literally like all of their stuff is basically saying like it's it's basically saying like climate change doesn't exist, the net zero rollout is not possible, and they keep like kind of going down this rabbit hole of like saying that there's all this research and all this behind it when there's literally nothing. Like she's talking about there how like it's not even a costly way of rolling out the transition and that, when like there's zero research behind anything she's saying. She doesn't ever reference anything, and there's just nothing behind it. And it's just interesting that they keep on saying that net zero isn't an achievable goal and that sort of stuff, when like there's literally mountains of evidence done, there's mountains of research done by the CSIRO, AEMO, like there's just endless amounts of research that's gone into it, and like all the papers that have just recently been published by Chris Bowen and the government, basically supporting all of it. Like I don't understand how you're upset that you're getting pushback on what you're saying when it's just like completely counterproductive to what they're trying to achieve.
Anyway, and these facts are all very, very important. However, one of the cardinal rules of political campaigning is people vote on feelings, not facts. Facts are needed to build a case and influence public opinion, but unless you can make a voter feel a certain way, unless you can make them feel like they should vote for or against a certain policy, then that groundwork that was laid with facts is lost. And this is why the conversation around climate policies has become so difficult, and why the left has built such a strong base of support, because the public has been sold this narrative that we have a moral imperative to tackle climate change, that it must be pursued at any cost, because if we don't, we are betraying our duty to preserve the planet for future generations.
So I'm interested to actually understand so is she trying to sit here and say that we shouldn't be doing anything about doing anything with the climate crisis that's going on, or is she saying that the left is just using climate change as a way to get to voters? I'm interested to actually know what her position is on it, because I dare say that where they're going around with misinformation is saying that climate change is a hoax, and that they're using it to manipulate voters and stuff like that, when there's a real danger out there with climate change. So I'm interested to sort of understand that.
Now, because I have both the blessing and the curse of being young, my Instagram algorithm automatically assumes that as a young woman living in inner city Melbourne, that I must want to receive political content from social media influencers like radical left-wing Greens ambassador Abby Chatfield. You know, the same Abby Chatfield that Albo just loves to sit down with and have a chat with on her podcast. Now, recently, my Instagram fed me a video of hers where she aired her feelings about wanting to have children, but expressing that this is a difficult decision to morally justify, because bringing children into the world at the beginning of the climate crisis is a concern. And she says, these are her words, not mine, "We only have a max of 100 years left until things are completely done." She said, "We can't have a kid when the climate is collapsing around us. I'm looking at the weather right now. This isn't normal."
See, I just love how there's a different standards where, like, she's gonna say Abby Chatfield, probably, she's scared that in 100 years or whatever that her kids aren't gonna have, a world living or whatever, a bit of doomsday there, which probably unlikely going to happen, but as in, like, I'm sure there'll still be a world here in 100 years. Not sure, but anyways, and she's laughing and sort of like criticizing her for that. But then on the flip side, she's like, Mia here is basically doing the exact same thing, but about the net zero drive, basically being like it's there shouldn't be any sort of net zero policies and stuff like that. Like it's all a hoax. So like she's kind of doing the exact same thing as what Abby Chatfield's doing, but for the opposite, in my opinion, anyway.
Now, this is where a lot of our young people are receiving their news. This is what they're being sold. However, I'm sure Abby Chatfield isn't going to be pulled in front of the misinformation inquiry. So when you turn to a young person or any Australian that has this idea drilled into them that they shouldn't even have children because the earth might collapse whilst they're living on it, then you can see where the discussion around costs and practicality kind of fall flat with them. The answer will always be, well, we need to at least try at any cost because it is our moral duty. This cohort will always vote in support of net zero because they've been made to feel like they're the good guys for doing so. This effectively gives Labor, the Greens and the Teals a home run when it comes to climate policy. They can run this however they want, at whatever cost, so long as it falls under this umbrella of...
Do you maybe not think that like all of the research and the scientific advice that they're given is all supporting climate change? Like when you look at all the different types of like climate related disasters going on, like with bushfires, droughts, all the algae stuff that's happening in the SA, tropical cyclone sort of thing along the east coast. Like, do you not maybe think that all this sort of stuff happening in a small duration of time is kind of like something that people maybe want to, that is a bit scary for people? Because, I don't recall this sort of stuff happening when I was younger. Like I don't know. I just feel like there is actually more and more supporting data behind the climate crisis that maybe that's sort of fueling it too. Hell, you could even go on and talk about and Hollywood movies and stuff like that. Like 2012, that kind of did it for me when seeing those massive tidal waves come through and wipe out cities. Like there could be a lot of like things like that too. Like have you seen like all the natural disaster things on Netflix now, like with the volcanoes, the tsunamis, all of that kind of contributes to it all. So like there's a lot more than just what the political sort of influence is on this.
Doing the right thing, not just for our country, but apparently for the existence of mankind. But the truth is, the cost...
Oh, and when she just recalled this, when she said about the 1%, like Australia contributes only 1% to the total global climate crisis. That's I believe that's a pretty fair statement. But the thing is that we are, a modern, advanced economy, which needs and we need to be leaders in this space for the globe, and we need to have we need to put our best foot forward in terms of I think like PNG and that when Albert went and visited recently, like they were very appreciated that Australia has taken such a strong stance on the global climate crisis, because we're all sort of in it together in a way, and it's a good look for Australia, and also like in terms of like from an economic point of view, going towards renewables and the net zero target it's going to be very beneficial to Australia in many ways, and we need very structured and controlled policies in order to actually get those investments too, and for it to be a much more controlled rollout, which probably won't get brought up here, but yeah.
Of net zero is very real, and these costs are not only fiscal, but they are human. There is a very real human cost of net zero. And when you visit, speak, and work with the communities that will be affected by net zero, when you understand the lived reality, you can no longer feel that this commitment is the right thing to do. And people vote on feelings, not facts. That is why this parliamentary inquiry is adamant on creating a narrative that this human cost is not real. Those politically in favour of the rollout of renewables will try and tell you that opposition from regional communities is not organic, that our farmers aren't wearing the cost. But at the IPA, we've actually been there. We've been with these communities, and this is the human experience of the so-called transition. And I'll give you a heads up. This isn't a transition, it's a demolition. Now, transmission lines are the critical piece of infrastructure that's required.
I can almost guarantee I can predict what she's going to do here. She's going to crap on about, all the farmers and all that, and like the transmission line going through their yard or their land, and it's going to devalue the land, et cetera, and you're probably not going to be able to farm there and all this sort of stuff. What I've failed to see from her and from the IPA in all of these kind of, these YouTube clips and that, is they never ever reference or cite any research paper that supports what they're saying. And that's all we need to see. Like, if you're going to make such a strong claim that goes against everything that the current government's doing, where they've got report after report after report after, research citations and everything, and you're going to go against that and do the complete opposite claim. Like, it's not even like you're going, oh yeah, you're just off the mark by like your targets are 5-10% off the target or something like that. You're going like completely abolish the whole target altogether. You need strong evidence, and that's just what they seem to be lacking. Which, that's why it sounds all rhetoric. Like, it's just all rhetoric, and it's just that she keeps going about the left having this like full narrative when they're doing it not only just as bad. Or I shouldn't even say that, not even just as bad, but like she's doing what she's claiming they're doing, she's doing twice as much, but with not, like, mostly because she hasn't even got any sort of, like, she's not even citing any sort of research behind it, which is, in my eyes, it kind of means that you haven't really got a strong argument there. Whereas at least like current government rolling out net zero, they've got like just so much evidence there to support why they're doing what they're doing.
to connect wind and solar factories that are constructed out in our regions to the power grid. This construction requires a 70-metre wide swathe cut through farming land and towers as tall as 80 metres high. Contrary to what is being sold by advocates, you cannot farm around these things. There are limitations on what sort of crops can be planted, as well as height restrictions on essential irrigation equipment, as well as machinery. Aerial spraying cannot be carried out at all, and this obstructs pesticide and fertilizer application, crucial for crop management. The reality is, industrial-scale wind, solar, and transmission projects destroy productive land that all Australians rely upon for food security, land that underpins our export markets. And in Victoria, the government knows this. In fact, their very own 2022 policy paper, which I might add has now been conveniently deleted, admitted that up to 70% of Victoria's agricultural land may need to be converted to renewable energy sites. 70%.
Really? They actually delete that? I might have to look into that. Yeah, what'd you say?
That up to 70% of Victoria's... In fact, their very own 2022 policy paper, which I might add has now been conveniently deleted, admitted that up to 70% of Victoria's agricultural land may need to be converted to renewable energy sites. 70%. This is not coexistence. This is demolition. And perhaps most concerning of
I'll have to have a look at that. That's a pretty bold claim.
all are the risks this infrastructure poses to local lives. We asked one of our farmer friends, Bill Baldwin, who we met with out on his farm, about the fire risk posed by infrastructure, and he said to us, "As a CFA member, I don't think it's safe at all to take myself or the crew underneath these things or around these things to fight a fire because it is too dangerous. It can kill you." His name.
Oh, come on. Like, that's probably one person who has one opinion out of all of them who's just a little bit scared, or he's probably, backing exactly the same claims that she has. Like, it's, they have like protocols and that for all different sort of like probably much more dangerous sort of situations. I think it's interesting.
Neighbour Will McIntyre said, "If the CFA can't fight fires around these things, which they can't, farming is going to become impossible. The risk of fire..."
Really, they can't fight fires around wind farms.
Fire is huge. At the end of the day, the majority of us are volunteers, so it's hard to justify risking your own life when these are things that we do not want and we do not need.
I feel like if there was a fire, like, surely just going into and fighting a fire is probably one of the hardest things to do anyway, surely.
His neighbour Will, "I don't think it's safe at all to take myself or the crew underneath these things or around these things to fight a fire because it is too dangerous. It can kill you." His neighbour Will...
Yeah, so gonna fucking fire. What are you talking about?
Said, "If this do not need." With the facts laid out, it is easy to see why regional communities are furious with what the inner city elite are trying to do to them. This is why most are fighting back to block access to their land.
It says inner city elite. Like, I'd love the...
Access to their land. With the facts laid out, it is easy to see why regional communities are furious with what the inner city elite are trying to do to them.
I love the name call in there, like the inner city elite, right? I don't know how to say this, but like, people who live in the city have different problems to what regional Australians have, like, what their problems are. Like, okay, let's just say you own a bit of land out in the farm, and now they've got to put transmission lines through. Okay, yeah, that sucks. Okay, you just have this nice, pristine bit of land, and now you're gonna have like these massive poles, or you're gonna see wind farms outside your window now. All right, in the city, you can have beautiful beachfront views and this really, really nice like panoramic sunset over the water, or sunrise, depending on where you are, over the water, and you just paid like $1 million for this epic apartment, and then literally 6 months later, a different developer can come in and just put this massive apartment right in front of you. The council or state government might go, okay, yeah, we're going to start putting tram lines through, or we're going to, develop a new shopping center here. So then they do this massive like project right out front of your house where like now they're bulldozing and like demoing all these buildings and shit for the next 12 to 2 years, 12 months to 24 months. And then now you've got like jackhammers outside of your house, like for the next couple of years. Like inner city has its own issues, and so regional, regional strength. Like, so this name calling it being like the inner city elite, like as if it's all, bells and whistles all the time. It's not. Like, people who live in the city have like just as, these shitty sort of issues too. Like, it's all about just the country's developing. We're all adapting to like new things. It's happening everywhere. Maybe it's not the same flavor, but it's happening everywhere. Like, like I drive around like on highways that literally have been trying to get built for years and years now. And it's just like all this fucking road traffic all the time. Like, it's just, everyone has different problems, but like to paint the picture here, like as if the inner city elite end up having like, sitting back going like, oh yeah, how can we screw the regional Australians because, we've been dealing it so tough or some bullshit like that. Like, it's so cringe.
This is why most are fighting back to block access to their land.
Like, imagine if people like in the city or the suburbs did that when they were like, trying to do like upgrade, roads and stuff like that to like highways, or, they started like blocking entrance for construction to come through to like upgrade a building or do a new development site. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how like it's okay for it to happen there, but not there. I think it's just an interesting difference in standards, if you ask me.
Advocates will say that they're consulting with these landholders, compromising and compensating to reach a middle ground of mutual benefit. This is not true. Farming communities told us stories of bullying, harassment, intimidation by affiliated companies, stories of widows being targeted because they're easier to get on side, neighbour pitted against neighbour, and police being called.
Are there any actual stories, like, release of this? Like, maybe I should look into it, but like, I don't think I've actually read like a proper story where this has actually happened and there's been proof of it actually happening. Like, I do believe, and I think it was reported in, I forgot what report it was in, but like, I do think that there needs to be more transparency with farmers regarding access to land. I think they need to, if they don't do that carefully enough, then yeah, you are going to get a lot of pushback. Like, I think, and I agree with that too. Like, the comments made before about, it being different. Like, yeah, like I think there needs to be a lot more transparency in those smaller communities, because they do, if something happens, they do seem to get affected more than when it happens in a city. Because like, if you're in a city, if you can't go down this way, well, then you can easily just go around the other way. You have different ways of access. Whereas, with regional communities, I guess like they're more dependent on each other than what you are in a city. So like, yeah. So I think there needs to be more transparency. But like when she says like these stories about bullying and stuff like that, I'm not too sure if I've actually seen or heard one, which is, yeah, interesting.
On farmers who question why an intruder is surveying their land in the middle of the night. In Victoria, because the Allen government knows they will never win community support, they have resorted to brute force. When farmers say no, the government's answer is not negotiation, it's legislation. Victoria has passed the most draconian land access laws in the nation. Under new legislation, government-appointed authorised officers can now march onto private land without consent and even use force against our farmers to construct transmission infrastructure. Any landholder who stands in their way, or even any landholder who doesn't facilitate access, will be hit with fines amounting to thousands of dollars. The Allen government's proposals are more invasive and more authoritarian than anything seen in any other state.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to look into so I'll just write this down. I want to look into that document that got apparently deleted in 2022. And then, okay, so Victorian government look like they're introducing legislation so they can access different people's land. I wonder if it's actually been used yet. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if anyone's actually used it, or why why that was actually brought in. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think that'll be a very, very good argument for, these righties to use in their sort of campaign against net zero, or at least like more protection for farmers. And I think it's kind of going along what I was saying before, like the need transparency, and perhaps there needs to be more compensation if they kind of feel like they're being taken advantage of, then 100%. And then if you've got these policies or legislation that's been written to, can 100% understand why they might feel like they're getting the shit end of the stick, but I have to look into that.
And why? Because the government has failed utterly to bring the community with it. And so here comes a legislative steamroller. This is the reality of the rollout. This is the human cost.
I'm going to assume that's why I saw those those clips of all those cars driving out Alba. I didn't know if that was real or not. I think it was in Ballarat, wasn't it? At some summit. And I think it was like farmers in their John Deere tractors or something. Like, I'm assuming this is probably starting to connect the dots here.
One of the tactics used by advocates is to downplay the volume of opposition, or in the instance of this parliamentary inquiry, simply argue that it isn't real. That the anecdotes I've told you about today have been made up by groups like the IPA. And this isn't true. That is why the IPA is soon to launch a new project that we've been working on, a database that tracks and maps every community that has either opposed wind, solar, or transmission lines to dismantle this lie that opposition is rare or isolated.
Yeah, that's exactly what they need to be doing. Like I sort of said from the start. They need to start putting together the research and the data points if they're gonna go for such a strong claim to say that net zero should be abolished and removed. Then you got to have like very, very strong data and evidence that of the claims that you're sort of making, and it's got to be greater than what the cost is due to the climate crisis. Like for example, like when bushfires occur or droughts, occur, those sort of things, like how much damage that does to Australian communities, and then also, when you look at like insurance premiums and all that, like what kind of damage does that amount to, and then the direction that you're trying to go with this, does that sort of outweigh the damage that the climate is doing to Australia? Like that's basically what you're fighting against, which is my point around like, you can sort of bring this sort of stuff together. Then what could possibly be an outcome from this is maybe more compensation to farmers, maybe more transparency, or something to do like with trying to smooth out the rollout. But I don't think you're gonna get enough support behind you to basically abolish net zero altogether, just because of how much it's costing Australia to not do anything about the climate, and the amount of data that is by the Treasury, by AEMO, the CSIRO, that basically says that if you go towards net zero, it's going to be greater for the Australian economy, and also like foreign partners and that sort of stuff. Like it's a pretty big fight.
Because when you map these communities, you see something extraordinary that begins to form: a wall of grassroots resistance forming around the inner cities, a wall built by farmers, families, and regional Australians who refuse to be silenced. It shows that this resistance is real, it is organised, and it is growing. And anyone who wants to push forward with these harmful policies will have to push through this wall. As you have seen on signs all around the event this weekend, values matter. Well, the value of sticking up for your neighbours matter. It doesn't matter that your neighbour is hundreds of kilometres away in a country town. These towns are under attack, and the front line of the battle of the net zero war that the inner city elites and the political class are waging on mainstream Australians. It is time to stand up. As mainstream Australians, we have to say once and for all that enough is enough. No more. Stop destroying our country.
I do feel just what she's not addressing there is like this country is getting hit by, climate events. Like what's your sort of solution to that then? If you're gonna go, let's just say you win the audience, and they basically go, okay, cool, we won't do the rollouts of renewables. Like what's your sort of answer then? Okay, but what about the increasing catastrophic climate events? What are you going to do to face that? Yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like this is one small piece to such a large problem.
Because the truth is that when we stand up for our values, we win. We saw it with The Voice, and we will do it again with net zero. So join the IPA in showing our regional...
Oh man, net zero and The Voice are just just indistinguishably like different sized issues. Like The Voice is just the Voice is just cultural and political. It has nothing to do with, I shouldn't say nothing to do, but like it doesn't have such a strong economic impact, whereas net zero does. It has a huge impact to like obviously the energy grid, import exports, foreign partners, obviously climate change. It's going to shape a lot of like the they're just two so different sort of topics. Like I don't think grouping them together here is a smart move.
And rural communities that we are on their side. It's time to end net zero once and for all and get Australia back on the path to prosperity. Thank you.
Well, I don't think there's someone from I think she's getting quite a lot of traction, or she might get quite a lot. She's kind of like the opposing sort of person for the right wing against Hannah Ferguson, I guess. Only thing with Hannah Ferguson, I feel, is that she's a bit more research driven from what I've seen of Hannah Ferguson. I've still yet to see any sort of mention of citations or anything from her or the IPA. So I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. It's interesting. So getting more interesting anyway.